Welcome aboard. You have just joined an elite group of shipyard employees. You are part of almost 100,000 shipyard workers across America who are dedicated to working safely. Your safety is important to our company. Working in a shipyard is no different than any other heavy industry. There are potential physical and health hazards present. If you follow the safe work practices established by the company, you will help prevent accidents and injuries before they happen. Always remember, safety awareness is the key to accident prevention and a healthy work environment. You are likely to be inundated with a great deal of information on your new job. We've divided this video into a three-part series: preparing to work in the shipyard, prevention, proper handling of yourself and materials, and the last part, potential environmental and health hazards in the yard. You will also receive more specific training on a number of these topics throughout your tenure at the shipyard. At the conclusion of this video, you should be able to recognize hazards, conduct yourself using appropriate basic safe work practices, and be capable of understanding and explaining basic safety requirements. You will each also receive your own personal workbook. Please listen closely to this program, take notes, and prepare to ask questions on any unclear subjects. As was mentioned earlier, there are potential physical and health hazards present in a shipyard. The key word here is potential. Thousands of people have spent their lives working in a shipyard without becoming injured or developing a health problem. Make sure you are one of them. Once again, always remember one basic rule: safety awareness is the key to your physical and health safety. Part 1. Preparing to work in the shipyard. Let's begin by discussing the required equipment you must wear in the shipyard. These are called your personal protective equipment, or PPE for short. First and foremost, always wear your hard hat and safety glasses with attached side shields in all production areas. Your clothing should be appropriate to your work environment. Your shirt should cover the upper portion of your body, including your shoulders, and your pants should be full length. Depending upon the work you are asked to perform, you may be required to wear additional PPE. This example of additional PPE is one of several types of respirators. During some shipyard operations, you may be required to use one of these. Although you may not be required to wear a respirator during certain operations, if you believe wearing one would be beneficial to your health, ask your supervisor. Before you actually use a respirator, you will be trained on its use. This includes a medical evaluation to establish your ability to use the respirator safely and effectively. You will be provided a fit test and training on hazard recognition and on the use and care of the equipment. A tight fit of the respirator mask is essential for your protection. Because facial hair makes it difficult to maintain a tight fit, facial hair is prohibited. Welding is perhaps the most common task performed in a shipyard. When welding, you must always wear a welder's hood or face shield, like the one shown here. You must also wear your safety glasses under your welder's hood or face shield. If you're electric welding, be sure you're wearing eye protection with the correct filter shade lens. During any welding, if your hood or hard hat does not cover the top of your head, you should wear an approved welding cap to protect your hair and scalp. The welding area should be screened or shielded so that others in the area will not be exposed to the intense light and sparks. If you're welding in an overhead location, the area beneath you must be properly isolated with barricades. If you have a helper, your coworker must wear the same PPE as you are wearing. Always dress appropriately when welding. At a minimum, this includes a hood or face shield, long sleeves, and hand protection. Your clothing should not be ragged or oily. Your pants should not have cuffs, and should cover the tops of your footwear. It's advisable to wear leather spats to protect your feet. And be sure that your collar fits snugly to prevent sparks from entering your shirt. Many accidents can be prevented by simply exercising good housekeeping. The yard you work in has many pieces of heavy machinery and heavy moving cranes. Many items left unattended can cause harm. Good housekeeping is one of the best measures to prevent this type of accident. It's easy to slip, trip, or fall without safe work practices. Keeping lines, cords, and hoses organized and out of the way of normal walking paths will prevent trips and falls. They should be rolled up when not in use. When in use, they should be routed overhead where possible, or hung off walkways with cable trees or hooks. They should not cross ladders, walkways, or gangways. Materials used on the job should be stored in an orderly manner and in appropriate areas. They should not obstruct aisles or walkways. Soiled gloves and rags should be placed in proper receptacles with self-closing lids. Oily gloves and rags are flammable and should be stored in designated storage areas. If any tool or electrical cord is or appears to be defective, it should be taken out of service and removed from the workplace. This also applies to PPE. Many slips are caused by water or an oily substance being spilled and not immediately cleaned up, which may cause a fall. Even if you did not spill the material, protect yourself and others by cleaning it up. All manholes, pits, and drains should be covered. If it's necessary to leave one open, place a barricade or warning device in a manner to warn others. No material or product may be released onto or into any stream, ditch, or body of water. Therefore, all waste material must be collected and disposed of properly. All drums and storage containers must be properly stored and labeled. For example, if material is transferred from a drum to a smaller container, the smaller container must bear the same labeling as the drum. If there is a leak, particularly from a drum, report it. To help prevent trips, keep the work area picked up and clear of debris. This especially applies to walkways. Place all waste and debris in their proper storage area or container. If you're welding, don't leave rods, electrodes, or stubs lying around on the floor or deck. They could easily cause you or a coworker to slip and fall. Part of a safe workplace includes lighting. Safe lighting is a must. Use explosion-proof lights in areas where conditions may cause an explosion. If light stringers or drop lights are used, they should have guards around the bulbs. Also, on stringers, there should be a bulb in each socket to prevent accidental shock or grounding. Next, we will move to fall protection. Anytime that you're working at a height greater than 5 feet above a solid surface, fall protection is required. If you're working over a body of water, you must wear a personal flotation device, or PFD. When wearing a PFD, be certain all straps and/or buckles are properly fastened. In some instances, you will be required to wear both a PFD and a fall protection harness. Your first line of protection against a fall involves engineering controls that the shipyard has in place for your protection. These controls include guardrails and hole covers. However, even if these controls are in place, additional fall protection may be required. In shipyards, the most common fall protection equipment is a body harness, which is connected to lanyards. When a harness is used, it must be a full body harness. Body belts cannot be used for fall protection. If you should fall, the maximum distance you may fall is 6 feet from the tie-off or anchor point to the point of the attachment on your harness. This is referred to as the free fall distance. This distance includes any device that may be included to help absorb the sudden stop at the end of your fall. You should always tie off overhead whenever possible. The higher you are able to tie off will reduce the free fall distance. As an example, if your lanyard is 6 feet and you anchor 3 feet overhead, your free fall would be reduced to only 3 feet. Be sure your tie-off point or anchorage is a secure point of attachment. In the event of a fall, the anchorage point must support your weight and the acceleration force. Also, the anchor point should be positioned so if you fall, you will not become entangled in the lanyard. When you're changing work positions with a double lanyard, be sure you are securely anchored to the new point before releasing the lanyard from the previous anchorage. Fall protection is also a consideration when working on scaffolds. Only people trained and qualified to erect staging and scaffolds can do so. You must never move, change, or in any way alter their work. Most fall injuries are caused by makeshift devices, such as using a bucket, box, or barrel to reach or access a higher elevation. Shortcuts like these should never be used. When a stepladder is used, never stand on the top of the ladder or on a step marked not to use, which is generally the step next to the top. Always fully extend the legs of a stepladder and engage whatever locking device the ladder provides. Never lean stepladders against a surface and not extend its legs. Extension or straight ladders present another set of safety requirements. When used to access heights, the top of the ladder must extend at least 3 feet above the area you're attempting to access. Be certain that both side rails of the ladder have a secure footing, are level, and will not move when you're using the ladder. The base of the ladder must be placed out from the bulkhead or structure at least 25% of the vertical distance to the top of the ladder. For example, the base to a 20-foot ladder must be no less than 5 feet back from the wall or bulkhead upon which the top of the ladder is resting. In addition, the top of the ladder should be secured so that it will not move. Never fully extend an extension ladder. There must be a minimum overlap of at least 4 rungs between the sections of the ladder. Always inspect any ladder by looking for cracked side rails, broken or missing rungs, and missing footers before using the ladder. Do not carry tools or equipment in your hands while climbing a ladder. Use a hand line to raise or lower tools, or use a shoulder strap container. Remember the 3-point rule. You must always have 3 parts of your body touching the ladder at all times while climbing or descending the ladder. Either 2 hands and 1 foot, or 2 feet and 1 hand. When descending the ladder, be careful of the final step. Be sure it's the surface. Many accidents are caused by missing the last rung. In addition to properly climbing ladders, always remember to keep at least 1 hand on the handrail when you travel up or down a stairway or gangway. Electricity is a necessary part of your life. However, whether you're at home or on the job, it can serve you or kill you. Defective electrical cords are a prime source of electrical shock. Remove the plug or turn off the electricity before using or working on a power tool or piece of equipment. Never use or work on live electrical equipment while standing in a pool of water or wet surface. If you don't pay attention, this could lead to a trip to the hospital or even worse. The most common procedure used to avoid accidents associated with all energy sources, including electricity, is known as a lockout-tagout procedure. For electricity, lockout-tagout means to manually disengage and/or isolate the energy source. Then try to start the equipment or device you isolated to to be sure you have disengaged the correct power source. A lock and/or tag is then placed on the electrical circuit, electrical box, piece of equipment, valve, or other device. The maintenance department generally performs this procedure. You should never remove a lock and/or tag without the permission of the person who installed it. Any exception to this rule must come from your supervisor. A device that is tagged out but no lock is present is considered locked out. Removal of this tag, which as a practical matter can be easily done, is considered the same as using a bolt cutter to remove a lock. Always use a ground fault interrupter when appropriate. Also, under no circumstance should you attempt to make an electrical repair unless you're certified to do so. Fire is another physical hazard. If you are not careful, an entire shipyard could go up in flames, including personnel. Firefighting equipment should be used for its intended purpose and by those trained to use it. Access to the equipment should never be obstructed. You should be aware of your company's fire response plan, and in the event of a fire, follow your company's fire evacuation procedure. Always remember these important points. Keep alert. Make good decisions. Think. Ask questions. If it isn't safe, don't do it. This concludes part 1 of our tape. Please stop the tape now and do the follow-up workbook assignments. Part 2. Prevention. Proper handling of yourself and materials. Welcome back. Our first session discussed preparing to work in the shipyard, your work environment, what to wear, how to use a ladder, good housekeeping, and potential hazards in the yard. It's important for us not to develop a casual attitude regarding personal safety. You don't have to become paranoid, but you should recognize that a basic requirement for your personal protection is to stay alert, be aware of your surroundings, and respect the potential hazards. In most workplaces, handling materials and products is essential. Load handling is a common occurrence. Various types of hoists, cranes, and forklifts are used to lift and transport heavy loads. While they make your workday easier, they also have the potential to cause physical damage. Never operate this type of machinery unless you have been trained and authorized to use this equipment by your shipyard. Before you are asked to rig a load for lifting, you will receive training on the proper techniques. If you ever have any question about how to properly rig a load, ask your supervisor. If you are working near a lifting situation, be aware of the potential for something going wrong. During load handling, the foremost rule is to never allow yourself to be positioned beneath a raised load. If you're in the vicinity of a crane or operating the crane from a ground pendant, always walk behind or to the side of the load. Never walk in front of the load, and never leave a suspended load unattended. Again, remember to stay alert of your surroundings. If you are the crane operator, remain alert for co-workers near your crane. Always lift straight up before moving the load. This will minimize a possible load swing. In lifting operations, always check the condition and capacity of the lifting equipment and rigging before attempting to lift a load. Never exceed the capacity. The handling of rigging, such as a sling, chain, or other type, creates the possibility of injury in a pinch point. A pinch point is a place where any part of your body could be pinched between two or more surfaces. This shows possible pinch points during a lift. Another common example of load lifting in a shipyard occurs when sections of heavy metal are removed and replaced on a vessel. During this process, each section must be properly supported and controlled, so it will not fall on you or your coworkers. Always be careful that any dog or pad eye is firmly connected. If a dog or pad eye breaks loose, the chain fall, come along, or metal plate could fall on you or a coworker. Chain falls and come-alongs are designed to be operated by one person only. If it takes more than one person to operate, it probably means the load is too great or the device is malfunctioned. Cheater bars on the handle of a come-along are not allowed. In some cases, load handling occurs manually. Back injuries are the most common injury during manual lifting and carrying. Practically any movement you make during the day involves your back. Improper lifting, regardless of the weight of the lift, is the main cause for back injury. You should always follow these rules. First, survey the object to be lifted. If the item is too heavy or unwieldy to lift, ask for help from a coworker. Use common sense. Don't be macho and try to move it by yourself. If you intend to lift an object, get as close to the object as possible. Set your feet shoulder width apart with your toes pointed outward. Be certain where you're standing is level and not slippery. Bend your knees and get a firm grip on the item. Always keep your back as straight as possible. Tighten your stomach muscles, then straighten your legs to lift the object, while keeping the object as close to your body as possible, and your back straight. Proper lifting is only one part of the procedure. Many injuries occur when the person turns to carry the object to its destination. To properly turn, move your feet only. Do not twist your back prior to or during the turn. Keep your back straight, even though you may have to slightly tilt backwards to keep your balance. Whether it's manual lifting, moving objects, pulling or pushing, or any other task, be careful not to overexert yourself. A part of your work may be physically strenuous. Be especially careful not to overexert yourself during periods of extreme heat or cold. This concludes part 2 of our series. Please stop the tape now. Turn to section 2 in your workbook and complete the assignment. Part 3, Potential Environmental and Health Hazards in the Yard. We've discussed some of the numerous physical hazards in parts 1 and 2 of this series. You should now be aware of the potential hazards in the shipyard and the importance of being alert at all times. Whether you're walking through the yard, handling rigging, welding, or operating a crane, potential hazards exist. There is a right way to handle yourself and a dangerous way. It's important to choose the right way. Remember, safety awareness is the key to accident prevention and a healthy work environment. Now let's turn our attention to environmental hazards. The signs of environmental stress related to heat exposure include nausea, excessive sweating, dizziness, muscle spasms, and headaches. If you experience any of these symptoms, you should immediately take a break to cool your body temperature. One of the best preventive measures for heat-related environmental stress is to keep replacing your body fluids by drinking plenty of water and taking periodic rest periods. In extreme cold weather, frostbite can occur. Frostbite generally affects your nose, ears, fingers, and toes. Just as with heat exhaustion, frostbite may occur before you become fully aware of it. Some symptoms of frostbite are a pins and needles sensation, a tingling of the affected parts, followed by complete numbness, with the skin appearing extremely white, cold, and hard. The best protection is to keep your extremities well covered. If you suspect frostbite, go to a place where you can warm your body. The use of lukewarm water will hasten the recovery. You should seek medical help if the symptoms persist. You may also encounter potential health hazards. A health hazard is exposure to a harmful substance by ingestion, inhalation, or absorption. In other words, the substance enters your body through your mouth, nose, or skin. This is an important reason why you should always wear your PPE, including a respirator when necessary. All industrial facilities have on site some degree of hazardous materials. Even your home probably has some hazardous materials such as cleaning fluids, detergents, bleaches, and so forth. It's how these materials are used and your company's hazard communication program that protects you from these potential health hazards. A shipyard is no different from any other heavy industry. Anytime you work in a facility where hazardous substances are present, you have a right to know about them. You will have access to a Materials Safety Data Sheet, or MSDS, which contains specific information about a potentially hazardous substance or substances. An MSDS is divided into several sections. This section advises you of the substance. Under health hazards are listed how the substance may affect you. And of importance is this section on protection. There are other sections, and you will be trained on how to read an MSDS. If you have any doubts concerning a hazardous substance, discuss it with your supervisor or the safety department. If you ever believe that a chemical or other substance has affected you, immediately report it to your supervisor. As most of you already know, asbestos has been banned in the United States for many years. However, some vessels may contain asbestos materials. You should not handle or otherwise work with asbestos without specific training and proper personal protective equipment. During surface preparation, you may come into contact with potentially hazardous materials. They may have resulted from the blasting materials used or from the materials being removed. Sometimes dust, whether created naturally or during surface preparation or other operations, could affect your lungs and upper respiratory tract. Fumes and vapors from paint and thinners can also present health hazards. Make sure that you wear respirators and other appropriate PPE in these environments. The last potential health hazard we will discuss relates to high noise areas. Most industrial facilities, including shipyards, perform some operations that make hearing protection necessary. Your company has a hearing conservation program. Look for signs designating high noise or hearing protection required. Make sure that you wear your hearing protection in these areas. There are several different kinds of hearing protection devices. They range from complete ear covers, much like an earmuff, to individual soft plastic plugs. Most have instructions printed on the packages. If you need protection, you will be instructed on how to properly use the particular hearing protection for your work area. As a practical matter, if a person standing next to you has to raise his or her voice to be heard, you should be wearing hearing protection. Hearing protection should also be worn if small metal particles or hot slag is in the air. Time will not permit listing every conceivable physical and health hazard, but we have discussed the most common ones. Always remember to be aware of your surroundings and use common sense to avoid these potential hazards. You may be asked to perform hot work in the course of your duties or asked to work in areas where hot work is being done. Hot work means riveting, welding, brazing, grinding, burning, or other operations that produce sparks or fire. Since these operations produce a source of ignition, they are prohibited near volatile gas or liquids, insulation foam, wood paneling, or any other combustible or flammable material. Hot work may also be prohibited in areas not certified as safe for hot work by a marine chemist or shipyard competent person. You will be instructed on how to read signs either allowing or prohibiting hot work. There are several precautions and procedures you should follow before commencing any hot work. Double check to be sure that there are no flammable materials nearby. Check your equipment, such as torches and hoses, for leaks or damage. Always remove unattended torch lines. If you're using a welding whip, be sure it's free of all nicks and other defects. Always check the other side of the bulkhead or deck for combustible materials before starting. Plan your work to avoid standing where sparks or hot slag may fall on you or others around you. Check for possible damage to equipment and fixtures. Be sure that your lines or hoses will not be burned by molten metal spatter. Also, the lines and hoses should be arranged to prevent a tripping hazard. Finally, make sure that you're wearing the appropriate PPE before beginning any hot work operations. When welding, be certain that all electrical grounding has been properly made. This includes the welding machine ground. In some situations, harmful fumes or vapors may be generated during hot work. You should check with your supervisor to determine if respiratory equipment is needed. Also, in some situations, a fire watch is necessary or advisable. A shipyard competent person or marine chemist will make that determination. A person must never serve as his or her own fire watch. A related area that you should be aware of involves the shipyard's emergency response plan. This shipyard strives for an accident-free workplace. However, in some instances, an emergency may occur. Be certain you have been informed of and understand the emergency response plan. There may be different procedures for a fire, chemical spill, or evacuation. If you have any question concerning the emergency procedures, ask your supervisor or the safety department for an explanation before an incident occurs. That way you'll know how to react if an emergency does happen. Another type of emergency is a minor injury or accident. Your supervisor must be advised immediately of all accidents or injuries, regardless of how minor they may appear. You must also report any near-miss situations. This allows preventative measures to be taken to protect against any future occurrences of a similar nature. At some point, you may be asked to perform work in areas designed as a confined space. Confined space means a compartment of small size and limited access, such as a double-bottom tank, void, cofferdam, or other space which by its small size and confined nature can readily create or aggravate a hazardous exposure. Respirators are often required PPE for use in these environments. Of like nature but less hazardous are spaces referred to as an enclosed space. These are spaces which are enclosed by an overhead and bulkheads. They include cargo holds, tanks, quarters, and machinery or boiler spaces. You are not permitted to work in a confined or enclosed space until you have received additional training. Even after you have received additional training, a marine chemist or shipyard competent person must declare the space safe for work. If you are working in a confined or enclosed space and you experience dizziness or nausea, you should exit the space immediately. You should also report your condition to your supervisor. If a co-worker remains in a confined space after you have exited the space with the previously mentioned symptoms, do not attempt to rescue your co-worker. Get some help. Only personnel with adequate PPE and training should re-enter the space. Many times during this safety orientation program, we have discussed training requirements. This shipyard believes that a well-trained employee is less likely to become injured. Your training is a continuing process. Training doesn't mean just attending the training sessions. It means you must learn what is being taught and prove it by passing tests on what you have learned. Depending on your job assignment, your training may include blood-borne pathogens, sandblasting and painting, hazard communication, confined space entry, fire watch, scaffolding, and lockout tagout. In closing, remember that it's your responsibility to use all recommended PPE. Be certain that your PPE is not damaged. At a minimum, this includes a hard hat and safety glasses with attached side shields in all production areas. Your clothing should also be appropriate to your work environment. Your shirt should cover the upper portion of your body, including your shoulders, and your pants should be full length. Footwear should have steel toes at a minimum, and metatarsal protection is recommended. Soft shoes such as sneakers or tennis shoes are prohibited. As part of your safety awareness, it's your responsibility to know the locations of first aid stations and emergency assembly locations. You should obey all warning and caution signs. Do not become complacent about these signs. Read them every time you enter a new area. The warnings or cautions are important every time you're in that area. We've covered a great deal of ground in shipyard safety. We trust that you have a better understanding of safety awareness, your responsibilities, and the efforts this shipyard has and is making to ensure you have a safe workplace. Your safety is our #1 priority. However, with all our efforts, it finally comes down to you. You make the difference. Please take your safety responsibility seriously. After all, it's your life we're talking about. Always remember these important points. Keep alert. Make good decisions. Think. Ask questions. If it isn't safe, don't do it. Now stop the tape and work the assignments under Part 3 of your workbook.